Good afternoon, Scott Baker.
Mikey, how are you? Good afternoon indeed. Monday, August 18th, and we are live here with Lead Better at 3 o'clock. And later, if you're watching on demand or listening on your podcast app, great. The topic today is keeping yourself top of mind. And when I read the headline, I was thinking it was going to be something different than what it turned out to be. But what it turned out to be is kind of cool.
Yeah, we talked around, I think that a behavior that we talked about in our firm meeting on Friday might have a little bit of overlap in this as well. We might end up talking about it too.
Okay.
So I like this idea, and it is a common issue, right?
Yes. Right.
So the issue is your wife asks you to paint the house, and you put it like 3 things back. And then 2 weekends later, she asks, when are we going to paint the house? And then you say something, and then it's just not in your radar. And then she asks again a month later. And then at some point she comes to you, and she is so angry that you haven't listened to her the first 4 or 5 times that she's mentioned it. So now it's like, get the house painted. And so you dive in for the postcard, right? For whoever the house painter is.
Whoever the house painter is. Yeah.
And whatever postcard is on the top of the deck is the one you're calling. Right.
Now, I have a question. Was this a hypothetical scenario?
Totally hypothetical. It's not
really
at all. Yeah. No.
This was not a confession of another domestic dispute.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Well,
I had someone else explain that illustration to me. I've used it once or twice before. Not because I was thinking of my wife or anything like that. I promise. It sounded like it, but it's not.
So it's top of mind for you, is top of the postcard stack of whatever came in the actual mail.
Right.
Right. Because at that point, by the way, that probably is somewhat helpful, because you're not going to be like, wait, what was the name of that company I saw on Facebook, that just scrolled by, and then you're not going to remember it. But that postcard could stick.
When you need to take immediate action, you're not going to take time to, think through that.
Well, here's where I got a little messed up when I first saw it, and not that it actually helps that much, but I was thinking when it said keep yourself top of mind, I thought, well, this will be interesting because maybe it's something about how you're prioritizing yourself to you. But that's not what this is. There could be an interesting field note to say, well, how would you do that? Like, how would you? Maybe I mentioned this once on one of our conversations. One of the partners in our firm said something just about the way that because they're all traveling, they're all very busy, and it was something done in terms of travel and convenience. It wasn't like anything exorbitant or luxury hotels or anything like that, but it was, I treat myself respectfully, which I thought, well, that's an interesting concept, right? Because you would say, if I'm going to be hospitable to other people, whether it's personally or professionally, there's a care that goes into how we would want to treat even members of our own family. Right. And so we would be treating them respectfully. We'd be treating peers, and we'd be treating clients respectfully in a way that is inviting. And respectfully, I'm not saying, oh, yes, with this is not an honor thing. This is,
no. It fits
I value you, right?
The way that the bear had that episode on I Wear Suits Now.
Yes,
right. You're just,
there's a different version of who I am. Yes, this is now, I'm going to live up to my own value. So I kind of thought that the only reason I'm saying it is, I think it leads then into what this is actually about. So because I was deceiving myself, because I've been thinking about that idea, because you don't want to get it into the wrong priority where it's like, I've got to always be thinking about how it benefits me, and how do I get me into this situation, and how do I always make it about me? That would be terrible too.
Right.
Yet here, what we would be saying is keeping yourself top of mind is you have some things that you do in the world. There is value that you're bringing to all kinds of equations. It's why you're out there doing it. Now, you want it to be profitable, you want it to be rewarding, but you also want to be creating, connecting, doing something in the world. We kind of use that phrase sometimes that I heard somebody say, what's the dent in the universe that you're trying to make? Well, if you're trying to make that dent, and it could be that you paint houses better than anybody within a 5-mile radius, then be out there so that people know that you're the person that does that, whether it's that company or you individually. And so yes, in a sales and a marketing sense, there's this get the postcard into the mailbox, get the ad up onto Instagram, just try to be top of mind. But we're all working and leaders are working in all kinds of circumstances where actually what we're trying to do is just as important as the person that's trying to paint houses or do whatever else needs to be done in the world.
Right.
And so how do you stay top of mind with the kind of people where you can help them make the kind of change that they're looking to make in the world, that you can be like, we did this.
Right. And the metaphor that we use inside of our firm is with the drip. And so that's why I took the time to put the hat on today.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, there needs to be a cadence and a rhythm to the kind of conversations that you're having with somebody so that the faucet is never completely turned off. Because the problem is typically when we have issues with other people kind of trying this methodology out on us and then they're not doing it well, is a couple different reasons, right? And it's almost always some college friend who you haven't heard from in decades is now reaching out on Facebook all of a sudden. And then you check out their profile and you see that they're selling some multi-level marketing thing or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And you know that within 2 or 3 back and forths, they're going to be asking you to be in their downline. And you're just like, it's such a beat down to be able to recognize that. So how do you approach this whole system so that it's not transactional, that you are actually just flexing your relational muscles, but doing that at a cadence where it doesn't become, and again, are we just teaching people to be better multi-level marketing salespeople? Like, is that what this is about? Because
no, I don't.
Sounds like it.
I don't think so, and I think I can prove it. And I actually executed it in the last half an hour to your detriment.
Okay.
But knowing that I would then be able to explain it in those terms right afterwards.
I didn't take offense to it, by the way. I was good with it. Yeah.
So, and I'll unpack that story here in a second. So, but the heart of this, in the terms of how are we saying top of mind, is how do you do this gracefully? That's the thing in the middle of this field note, which is if you're keeping up with other folks in your relational cadence and you're trying to add value in that relationship in a way that they're like, oh yeah, Mikey's great, she's great, whatever that connection is. So, if you're trying to offer something or you're trying to kind of make it clear that there's sort of a sales intent, then it's going to be inauthentic. And so how you do this in many ways is, and there's some stages here, and the field note kind of gets to the point of saying, when we're actually asking people for input and advice and counsel on things, that becomes a real bonding mechanism, and we can unpack that. The stage before that is really, how am I adding value to you, which I think is really the one that's the test. Yes, it'll help you actually get to the point where the request for advice or input is not like, hey, do you have time for coffee? Because a lot of people are like, no, I don't want to have coffee.
Yeah.
And because they know I don't want to get entwined with you and whatever your story is, because I just don't have the mental bandwidth for that.
Right.
And so and most people are just not good at that. Like even people that should be, like just are not reaching out and saying, hey, I know you're kind of interested in this thing.
Yeah.
And so I find that I just like doing it. Right. Yeah. So most of the time that I'm doing it, it ends up just being interesting conversations, fun conversations. Most of the time I'm connecting people to other people. Mm-hmm. And we talk about, and in fact, in our sequestered behavior that's behind our paywall, even in the one that talks or makes the reference to the analogy of drip, the hat that you're wearing, it's pointed out there that there are people that have kept up relationships of adding value for a decade or more. Now, if there's never a response, you're not going to do that. But if there's some cadence back and forth, you can take on the heavy shoulder, like the load of saying, yeah, I am going to be looking out for your best interest, and the consistency of how I'm doing it is what's important. And I actually don't have anything to sell you because I don't have anything to sell you. Like, right. You know what I do, and at some point, maybe you'll need that, maybe you won't. So that's a tremendous thing. So what happened in the last half hour was simply that there's a person in my network that I will reach out to from time to time. And sometimes we've done things that kind of got near a project, and probably it's been, I don't know, 5-8 years since anything really happened in terms of work. So I just like this person. I like the people that they're involved with. And so, I had texted this person. They were traveling in other countries and had been offline, and I had texted them twice in the last, I don't know, 2 months, something like that. Didn't respond to the first one. Didn't matter to me because I assumed this person I know is very, very busy.
Right.
I didn't ask for a response. And then even the thing that I texted just the other day was innocuous. It was more of a joke than anything. And that person just called me back, and you and I were actually in a meeting, and I muted myself in the middle of our conversation because I knew you would actually enjoy the story. I wasn't and as you said, you weren't terribly offended.
No,
and I left the camera. I left the camera on because I didn't want to miss. I knew this person often bounces from country to country, and I thought, well, I'm just going to jump on this call. We had a great conversation right before we came on here, and I will probably, I have a feeling I will end up being the person that helps that person connect to other people that they need to have in their network more than maybe they will be able to help me with things that I want to do in the world. But who knows?
Yeah.
It's more of a function of saying, are you just that kind of person? And as a leader, you should dial that up. So that if you're trying to be that person, just be saying, how can I add value? And then when I have a good, like the person that called me, very much the person I could call. And they're junior to me in terms of age and experience and all the rest of that. But I often am calling younger people and saying, help me out with this, right? And that would be a very natural thing to happen. So that's just a case study in the last half hour.
Yeah. So do you have something in mind that is like a time horizon that says 10 years from now, I'm going to want to rally my entire network to do something for me that's going to basically reciprocate all the volunteer hours that I've put into my relationship network, right? Where it'll be my thing, where it'll be my mission.
I haven't asked, or yeah,
right. Where
that could be,
yeah. But in some ways, that's the frame of reference that I put myself in for. Like, it feels like I'm not doing any of this for gain. Like, gain does come to me, but I don't. I like it, and I feel almost like in order to really do well at this, all the transactional reasons that you would have to practice this kind of routine need to go out the window. Like you need to just forget about it. And I think there's probably a lot of sales leaders out there who would cringe at hearing us talk like this, because at some point you do need to sell. And at some point you do need to go into close mode, right? And at some point you do need to ask the question about that. But in this relational maintenance stage, most of those thoughts need to be out of your brain because they're so transparent, right?
Yeah.
They're very transparent.
Well, I think even the best sales and marketing people are looking to add value to people when it's not transactional. And that actually leads to the point where there is a transaction. Great. Nobody is against doing the kind of right thing that happens, right? Yes.
If you're in a pinch, just kind of, I need to accelerate through this because we're getting close to time.
Yeah, go.
The question comes up, well, what is the one thing that I can do that will work in just about every occasion? So the universal that we're positing here in this field note is ask for advice. Mm-hmm. Like if you're actually leaning into saying, can I get your help on something? Mm-hmm. And especially if it's really just advice, there is something about that is really endearing for people that you should go ahead and choose to do more often, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think this is a great way to get back into it if you've let a relationship go cold?
No, I don't actually, because I do think that people, people are used to this in the fundraising area in startups, which is if I ask you for money, I'm not going to get money. If I ask you for advice, I might get money. Right. If I say, here's my idea, tell me if this feels like there's a market there, and then you listen to me, and then you go, oh, that's really good, thank you. And then I'm hoping that you're intrigued, and you call me later and say, how's that going?
Yes.
Oh, pretty good. We're getting our first round is going really well. Is it too late for me to get in on that? And that was my goal all along, was to kind of lull you into funding me. No, people are very, very, very aware of that. So if I just come to you and say, Give me some advice. But with nuance, gracefully, I think you can get there. And I think that the better way on the cold relationship is finding that thing. This reminded me of you. And we talked about some of those things in our firm meeting as well.
Exactly.
I mentioned that I keep a 5-year journal. I write down things every day, a couple of lines. And then I'm often looking back. And it's just so much fun to see 2 years ago, 4 years ago, this happened. And I'll often remind people about that. I'll say, hey, it was actually this weekend, 3 years ago. And I said this to a guy the other day. That guy fired you 3 weeks ago. Look what's happened now to him, to you, like where it's all gone. They're like, that's amazing, right? So you can bring up people's storylines and help elevate their sense of themselves just by bringing these things up. Then if you rekindle something, you're like, well, they're like, what are you working on now? I'm working on this. We're trying to figure out this. I don't know if you know anything about that or know anybody who does. Let it come naturally.
Yep. And you've done that to me before. Like I've been a subject of your 5-year journal and I never thought when you did that, even though I knew what you were doing and why you were doing it, it still didn't feel contrived to me.
Right. If someone were doing it to me, I'd be like, great.
Yeah.
Like I'm glad you're thinking about me.
Yes.
Now, keeping top of mind, there's a different marketing element to say, what do people think? Do they know what you can do, you or your company? So if you need the painting company, you need to know they're the painting company. If you need to have the social media marketing person company, you could say, oh, Mikey's the best at that, right? Or if they think of me, that they think, well, I don't know what he does. So, that's a bad situation.
He was a teenage magician. Never forget
that. Was yesterday's show. All right, we're past time, but that's what we do on Lead Better. And this field note on keeping yourself top of mind is really just a field note about how are you better at developing real, authentic relationships? And that's an amazingly powerful topic. And we will continue to talk about it in these conversations. Oftentimes, even when the field note itself has nothing to do with it in particular, we'll find a tie to bring this part of it out.
Yes. All right. Fantastic. Join us tomorrow. Thank you, Scott. Talk tomorrow.